Right, so hello and welcome back to Books and Things, and welcome to another video and welcome to a channel update. Today is my 9-year anniversary on Booktube, so I thought I would announce a Q&A and also tell you about my new Patreon. So 9 years ago today, on the 6th of June 2015, I posted my first ever Booktube video. So I've now been doing Booktube for 9 years, which is a really long time. And I think it does feel like an especially long time because I started it when I was 22 years old. I was just finishing up a master's in creative writing at the time. So, you know, like I was still like in education studying when I started this Booktube channel, and now I am 31 and like have been working as an adult for a really long time, and like studying feels very, very long ago. So it's not just that I've been doing it for 9 years, but it's 9 years in which my life has like totally changed. So I find it kind of weird that I have been doing Booktube for 9 years, even though it is very fun. I think I spoke a bit more about this when I did the Booktube journey tag a couple of months ago, but 9 years does feel like a long time to have been doing this for, and that is kind of exciting to have been doing it for this long. So I thought in honour of my 9-year anniversary on Booktube I would do a Q&A. I feel like I have done some Q&As in the last couple of years, but I feel like they have been more like specific, either like writing related Q&As or freelance related Q&As, so I thought I would just do a general Q&A. Please ask me questions about, you know, reading, writing, editing, the Victorians, whatever you like. Leave questions down in the comments below, and I will pull together a list and do a Q&A at some point. I think I will leave the Q&A open until, let's say, the end of June, but I don't know when the Q&A video will be up because I do have lots of other video plans in July, so maybe it won't be up till August, but you know, I still thought it might be fun to do in honour of 9 years on Booktube. And then I thought, as I was doing a Q&A in celebration of 9 years on Booktube, I might as well make it a two-way Q&A. So this is something I did years and years ago. I think like the first time I ever did a Q&A on Booktube when I hadn't been on Booktube for that long. But I've set up a survey using Google Forms, and I will leave the link down below in the description, and if anyone wants to go and fill out the survey, that would be really helpful. It's not going to take you that long. There are like 7 questions, and most of them are like tick box, multiple choice things, and it's all anonymous. Like, I'm not going to collect your email addresses or your names or anything like that. It's mostly things like, you know, what kind of videos do you most like to watch? What kind of books are you most interested in? How long have you been watching my channel? How much Booktube do you watch in general? That kind of thing. Just because I feel like it would be interesting to know a bit more about like the watching and reading habits of people who watch my channel and kind of what videos people most like. I just thought that would be quite interesting. Like I said, I did a similar thing years and years and years ago and found it really interesting, so I thought it might be fun to do now. So I set up a Google form, and yeah, I'll leave the link down in the description. Please do go and fill it out if you would like. It would be really, really helpful. I will leave that survey open, well, I was going to say until the end of June, but actually I'll probably leave it open longer than that because I will probably look at the answers at the end of June, but I guess I would still look if people responded to it later. I don't know, we'll see. And then the other kind of like channel update thing I wanted to talk to you about today is that I have started a Patreon. So I have been umming and ahhing about starting a Patreon for a really long time, and I have decided to set one up. So if you don't know, Patreon is a platform which quite a lot of YouTubers and other people making things use in order to allow people who watch and enjoy their content to tip them, but like in a subscription model. So you pay like however much every month to get extra content or to just support a creator. I support a few people on Patreon. It seems like a good model to me, and it's something that has been in my head to possibly do for a while. Basically, I've been thinking about it quite seriously since I went freelance 2 years ago, and I feel like my 9-year anniversary on Booktube is a nice like time to launch a Patreon. I kind of wanted to explain my like thought process behind setting up a Patreon. Like I said, it has been vaguely in my head for a while, and I think it has been much more in my head since I went freelance because I work freelance. I'm a freelance editor and an author, and as an author, like, you get paid per book sort of in advances. It's a complicated thing, but as a freelance editor, like, I get paid by the hour, so my time is kind of my money. When I went freelance, I started tracking the hours I spend every week on freelance editing, which makes sense because, you know, most of the time I'm charging by the hour, but I also track the time that I spend writing, doing writing related admin, doing freelance related admin that I don't get paid for, you know, invoices and that kind of stuff. And I also started tracking the time that I spent on Booktube. And I don't know if I spend more time making Booktube videos than I used to, or if I just never realized how much time I spend making Booktube videos. But I would say that I spend about on average 8 hours a week doing Booktube stuff, mostly filming and editing, sometimes replying to comments and stuff. And I love doing Booktube, it's really, really fun, but like 8 hours is the equivalent to a full working day. And as someone who works freelance, I am quite aware that like those are 8 hours that I could be doing freelance editing. And it's absolutely not that I want to spend less time on Booktube or that I would spend less time on Booktube without Patreon. Like 8 hours a week is fine. I managed to fit that in around other things. That's absolutely fine. And, you know, I do earn a bit of money from YouTube through ad revenue, but like it's not very much. Like I said, this is also a hobby, and one of the reasons why I haven't started Patreon before was because like I like spending time on Booktube and it's really fun, and I don't feel that I need to earn more money from Booktube in order to spend the time on it that I do. However, I do very much feel like I can't spend any more time on Booktube than I do. And I do sometimes feel a bit anxious about how much time I spend on Booktube when I could be doing freelance editorial work or writing. And there are definitely things I would like to do on this channel that I don't have the time to do. One of the main reasons why I have started a Patreon is because last October, Scott from Gunpowder Fiction and Plot, whose channel I'll link down below, put up a series of 3 amazing videos about how the Victorians read. And these 3 videos were long and in-depth and required so much research from him, and they were fantastic videos. And he said in one of those videos that he wouldn't have been able to make those videos without having a Patreon and earning money from Patreon that allowed him to like dedicate the time to do research to make those kind of videos. And I would really like to make those kind of videos, and I feel like I can't because I don't have the time to do extra research and prep and to kind of do more with my channel. I made a video last October myself about serialization and the Victorians, which did require a lot of research and took me a really, really long time to make. And I really, really enjoyed making that. But like, I do not feel that I have the time to make that kind of video more than like once a year. And I feel like with a Patreon and with a bit more like financial support through Patreon, I could make more interesting videos. Like the point of a Patreon for me would not be the stuff I would be doing on Patreon. It would be to make this channel better, and to help me dedicate more time to this channel and not feel like anxious and guilty when I dedicate more time to this channel. Like I love Jane Austen July and Victober and posting 3 videos a week in those readathons, but I also find it quite stressful around work and like fitting it in around other stuff. And if I could be like, well, because of Patreon, I can take 3 days off freelance editorial work this month to pre-film all my Victober videos, like that would be really amazing. And that would allow me to do more interesting stuff, I think. But I feel like one of the reasons why I have been umming and ahhing about doing Patreon for ages is because I do feel a bit like complicated about putting any content behind a paywall, partly because, you know, I don't want to put stuff behind a paywall, but also because if I spend time making a video, I don't want like 5 people to see it when 1,000 people could see it. So I've been thinking really hard about like what I could do on Patreon that I feel would be interesting and like a nice added bonus for people who want to come over and join my Patreon, but also that aren't like such a big deal that anyone not joining Patreon would be missing out too much, which I feel like is a terrible way of asking you to come support me on Patreon. It's not that exciting, but it's quite fun. But I feel like that was like the balance I wanted to strike. You know, nothing from this channel will be moving to Patreon. I will still be doing 2 videos a week here. The stuff that I will be doing on Patreon will all be like bonus extra stuff, not stuff that I will be doing without Patreon. But Patreon will hopefully allow me to do those extra things and also do more on this channel. Obviously, I'm still like working this stuff out, but I hope this channel will be the better for it and that you'll all see a bit of benefit whether you are supporting me on Patreon or not. So let me explain what stuff I'm going to be putting on Patreon. So I've set up 2 tiers on my Patreon. Tier 1 is Friday Reads. So this tier is $2 a month or £2 a month, or, you know, you can go and click on the Patreon page below to see what the cost will be in whatever currency you use. And anyone who is signed up to this tier will get access to Friday Reads videos. So I will put up extra bonus chatty Friday Reads video most Fridays. I'm saying most Fridays because like if I'm ill or on holiday or have like an absolutely hellish week of freelance editing, then I might not do a video, but I would expect to have a Friday Reads video up like, I don't know, 47, 48 weeks of the year. So nearly every week I will do a Friday Reads video, which will be like 10 minutes chatty, not very edited. Here's what I've been reading this week. Here's what I'm reading this weekend. I feel like that is a nice extra fun thing, but also if you don't want to support me on Patreon, then you will hear about those books in the wrap up at the end of the month, so it's fine. Again, not very good at persuading you to come and support me on Patreon, but I hope you appreciate the honesty. And then the other thing I'll do on that tier is say once a month, once every 2 months, I'll pick like several things out of my TBR jar, or I'll pick some books off my physical TBR and say, what should I read next? You know, pick what I read next, and get people to vote and decide what I read next, because I thought that might be fun as well. I feel like that's the kind of thing I've seen other people do on Patreon. So that is tier 1, Friday Reads, and sometimes choosing my TBR, I guess. And then I also have a second tier, which is the Historical Fiction Book Club. So this is $4 a month or £3.50 a month, or again, go and look on the page at what your currency might be. This tier includes everything you would get in Friday Reads, so you're still getting Friday Reads videos and choose my TBR stuff, but you would also be part of a historical fiction book club. I feel like a lot of booktubers who do Patreon have some kind of book club, and I thought that might be a fun thing to do. And I wanted to make it a historical fiction book club because I feel like the two kind of main categories of books I speak about on Booktube are classics and historical fiction. And I didn't really want to do a classics book club on Patreon. One, because I know, you know, there are lots of other booktubers doing that already, but also I just feel like read-alongs of classics belong on Books and Things and will always remain on Books and Things, whereas historical fiction, I feel like, yes, I know a lot of people who watch this channel really love it, and I think it would be really fun to have a book club with some of us, but I feel like that's less of a loss if that's on Patreon rather than on my main channel, if that makes sense. And the idea behind this historical fiction book club will be that we read one work of historical fiction together every month. I'm not going to do like a live Zoom or anything like that, just because I'm not super comfortable being live, but instead I have set up a Discord server for the book club, which you will get access to if you're signed up to the Patreon for the Historical Fiction Book Club, and we'll chat about the books we read every month on the Discord server, and maybe we'll like pick a day at the end of the month where we all like leave our thoughts, or have a more like live written conversation on Discord. We can work that out. That might depend on how many people there are. So I have selected the first 3 books for the Historical Fiction Book Club. I've chosen the books for June, July and August. I think after that, from that point onwards, we will like pool recommendations or vote on what to read, but I thought just to get us started it would be good to pick the first 3 books. So in June we're going to be reading The Fraud by Zadie Smith, which is a work of historical fiction set in the Victorian period. In July we're going to be reading A Lady's Guide to Scandal by Sophie Irwin, which is set in the Regency period. And then in August we're going to be reading The Bookbinder of Jericho by Pip Williams. I think it's just called The Bookbinder in the US, and this is set in Oxford in the 1910s and during the First World War. I think these 3 books should be quite interesting, and I'm really looking forward to all of them. So I thought they would be a good like start for the Historical Fiction Book Club. Those 3 books are relatively new releases, but I think we might also do some like classic historical fiction too. You know, we could read some Toni Morrison or some Daphne du Maurier. Come October and Victober, we'll read a Victorian work of historical fiction, so a book written in the Victorian period, set before the Victorian period. I think most of the rest of the time we'll probably end up reading contemporary historical fiction, but I feel like it would be good to find a way to fit this into Victober too. In springtime, I'll probably want to read some like Walter Scott Prize longlist books, but in general I think it would be nice to have a mix between like more literary historical fiction and more like reading group historical fiction, more commercial historical fiction, you know, some historical romance. We can maybe do some like historical fantasy stuff. Like I feel like it could be quite a varied historical fiction book club, and I think that would be quite fun. So those are the 2 tiers, Friday Reads and the Historical Fiction Book Club. I think this will be quite fun. Patreon is a bit of an experiment for me, so maybe things will change, and you know, like if there's only like 3 of us in the Historical Fiction Book Club, then maybe I will end up just having 1 tier instead, and letting it go. But I think it is a fun idea, and I think it could be fun if people want to join. I think Patreon should be good fun, and like I said, I'm really hoping it will feel like a nice extra for anyone who wants to come and join, but also it's not going to feel like a loss to anyone who doesn't want to come and join, because that's not what I want it to be. Basically, I feel like Patreon could really help me like dedicate a bit more time to this channel, feel that I am allowed to dedicate a bit more time to this channel, and like make this channel more sustainable, and I hope that makes sense. Anyway, I feel like this has been a slightly rambly video, but I hope that all makes sense. Please head over to my Patreon if you would like to. Leave any questions for the Q&A down in the comments. Do go and answer the survey if you can. That would be really, really nice. And otherwise, that's all for now. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll be back very soon with another bookish video.